Welcome. Today we're going to tell you some stories. And these aren't just any stories. They're chilling accounts. Experiences of the unexpected, the terrifying, things that are truly difficult to explain, and they've definitely left a mark on the people involved.
Absolutely. These are real experiences shared by the people who live through them.
Exactly. We want to share these moments when life just took a horrifying turn. And just so you know, the tone today will match the stories. It's going to be serious, maybe a bit unsettling.
Yes, these stories really remind us how thin that veil can be sometimes between what feels normal and something truly disturbing. They touch on fear, uncertainty in some really varied ways.
Okay, let's begin with our first story. It takes us to Romania, deep in the wilderness. Our narrator was at university at the time, part of a hiking society. It sounds tame, but they apparently did some pretty adventurous trips. This one was to the Carpathian Mountains.
Ah, the Carpathians. Vast, wild forests.
Yeah, mostly in Romania. Known for rugged terrain, and also some pretty serious wildlife, Brown bears, wolves, lynxes. Not creatures you'd want a surprise meeting with.
Definitely not.
But it wasn't the animals that made this trip so memorable in a bad way. It was people. The group got completely lost in the Radna Mountains National Park.
That initial excitement of being lost, testing your skills, it can turn quite quickly, can't it? Especially when you're truly isolated, supplies are low, desperation kicks in.
It really does. The group was led by a professor, George. At first, they saw it as a challenge, but they needed to find this specific mountain pass. And their food, their water, it started running out. Then, as twilight was coming on, they stumbled across this, it looked like an abandoned mountain village. Almost. But it wasn't abandoned, there were villagers. And here's where it starts getting strange. The narrator said they just didn't look right.
How so?
Well, the suggestion was maybe signs of inbreeding, but mostly this faraway, glassy look in their eyes. It really unnerved the hikers.
I can imagine. That sounds deeply unsettling.
Yeah. But they were starving. The villagers offered them food, goat milk, goat meat, big potatoes, and apparently after nearly 24 hours without food, it tasted incredible.
Hunger makes anything taste good, I suppose.
True, but then they asked the village headman for directions, help finding the pass. He just refused, made gestures like tomorrow, in the morning.
Not helpful.
Not at all. And the group felt really uneasy about staying. Some of the girls mentioned getting creepy looks, unsavory looks from village boys.
Okay, that adds another layer of unease.
Definitely. So even though it was getting dark, wolves howling like on previous nights, they decided to leave. They thanked the headman, gave him some money, a big chunk of change, the narrator said, packed up, and just headed out into the twilight. Found a spot a good distance away to make camp.
That's a tough call. Staying in an unsettling place versus heading into the wilderness at night. It shows how uncomfortable they must have felt in that village. Remote communities can sometimes be wary of outsiders.
For sure. They got tents up, fires going, tried to settle down for the night. Tough trek ahead. But sleep wasn't really on the cards.
Oh.
Middle of the night, the narrator gets shaken awake by their tent mate. And they hear George, the leader, calling out. Something like, "Do you speak English? Are you from the village? We're leaving in the morning. We don't want any trouble."
But no answer.
Silence. Just silence. The narrator peeked out, and it wasn't just one person. There were 4 or 5 figures standing up on a ridge above their camp, shining flashlights down on them.
Wow. Just standing there.
Silent.
Completely silent, which was terrifying. Were they robbers? Or something worse, given those looks the boys gave earlier? They had no idea.
That silence is incredibly unnerving. It lets your imagination run wild with the worst possibilities. The uncertainty itself becomes a source of terror.
Exactly. It felt like forever, but then a couple of the male hikers got out of their tents, and the flashlights just clicked off. They heard boots crunching on rocks, moving away, then silence again.
They retreated, yeah. But nobody slept after that, too scared. Soon as it was light, they packed up fast. Fueled by fear and that village food, they pushed hard for the pass. By early afternoon, they made it to a larger village, found a small bar.
Relief, finally.
You'd think. The owner spoke pretty good English. So they told him about their ordeal, the strange mountain village.
And his reaction?
He just looked sort of bemused, told them flat out there are no villages around that pass. Said they were all demolished back in the communist era. People moved to collective farms.
What? But they were just there.
That's what they told him. They insisted the people must have moved back. But the bar owner, he wasn't having it. He started going on about how it was the best thing for them, calling the mountain people illiterate, saying they needed to be dragged kicking and screaming into the modern world.
Okay, quite dismissive.
Very. But then he leans in, completely serious, no hint of a joke, and says, they're cannibals.
He actually said that.
Yeah. Said they eat the weakest of their own number to conserve resources. And worse, that they steal the breast milk of their pregnant women to distribute among the men.
It's incredibly specific and disturbing.
Right. And then one of the hikers, horrified, just blurts out, but the first thing they gave us was meat and milk.
Oh, no.
The bar owner's face just changed. Absolute horror. He didn't say another word, just turned, walked away behind the bar and ignored them, left them sitting there thinking about what they'd eaten.
Wow. What a story.
Yeah.
Even if you dismiss the cannibalism claim, as the narrator seems to, the core of the fear, those silent figures on the ridge, their unknown intentions that remains deeply unsettling, and the conflicting history. It leaves you wondering, what was really going on up there? What did those figures want?
Exactly. Chilling questions with no easy answers. Now, from that remote wilderness, let's shift to something much closer to home, but maybe even more terrifying. Inside a family house.
Okay.
This story comes from a woman looking back to when she was just 14. She was visiting her estranged maternal grandparents. Rural South.
All right, setting the scene.
The reason for the visit wasn't great. Her aunt was living there, and she was having what the family called a severe psychotic break.
That's a serious situation. Losing touch with reality, delusions, hallucinations.
Yeah. And it sounds like it was maybe fueled by a really dangerous mix: methamphetamine, diet pills, depression, and strangely, an obsession with a Ouija board.
That's a volatile combination. Methamphetamine alone can induce psychosis. Add other substances and mental health issues. It's incredibly worrying.
They found the aunt nude, curled up, talking to herself. Her notebooks were filled with just nonsense symbols, equations about gods and demons. The grandparents felt they had no choice. They couldn't get immediate help, so they locked her in a guest room while they went to find assistance.
Leaving the 14-year-old niece alone in the house with her.
Exactly, alone.
Yeah.
And then it happened. The narrator remembers being hit hard from behind, pain exploding in her head. She woke up tied to a chair, brown twine around her neck, her body couldn't move, and her aunt was standing in front of her. The description, it's hard to hear. Meth sores all over her face and arms, weeping holes, blackening holes oozing, severe meth mouth, caked feces on her legs and her eyes. Just a feral glint.
This is the absolute extreme of psychosis, likely amplified by the meth. The physical state, the violence. It's horrifying to contemplate. The disconnect from reality is total.
It gets worse. The aunt starts pulling her own hair, muttering, "They say I can take your hair for myself." Then she grabs the girl's hair, tries sawing at it with a dull knife.
Jesus.
Couldn't really cut it, so she turns to the girl's hands. Gets a hammer, probably what she used to knock her out, and she brings it down on the girl's left index fingernail, cracks it.
No.
Then, while the girl is sobbing, their aunt starts digging out the nail pieces, ripping them away, one by one. Did the same to the middle finger, the thumb. The pain was unbelievable.
I can't even imagine.
Then the aunt leaned over
Yeah.
and sucked on the girl's bleeding index finger.
It's beyond words.
Looked up, spat blood in the girl's face, started ranting, "The Dark Lord, people in the walls, government, radio waves," and then leaned close, whispered, "Smell my brain rotting. He wants your skin." And then licked the girl's face with her tongue, tried to get it in her mouth.
This is pure nightmare fuel. The delusions are completely controlling her actions.
The girl spat at her. The aunt screamed in rage, swung the hammer again, hit her mouth, knocked out a front tooth. The terror just kept building. The aunt gets a marker, starts drawing a Ouija board on the floor, uses a glass coaster as the planchette, muttering about summoning something.
The Ouija board obsession coming back.
Yeah, and then, the narrator says, the coaster slid across the board on its own, making this screeching sound. Just then, a loud crash from the kitchen. The aunt giggled, said it was a sign.
Okay, this is entering seriously strange territory.
She grabs the knife again, carves those same symbols from her notebooks into the girl's thigh, then slices and peels back a small circle of skin, puts it on her own nose, and giggles again.
This is torture. Pure psychological and physical torture.
The girl, through the pain and terror, looks at the corner of the room, and she swears she saw a shadow gathering, like something evil was actually being drawn there. The aunt kept whispering threats, "Slice you wide enough for them to crawl inside. I'll stuff them into you all inside." Started wailing, clawing her own arm until it bled pus, then smeared that into the girl's eyes.
God.
The girl just desperately struggled, tipped the chair over, but the twine around her neck held her, vision blurring, seeing faces in the darkness. And then finally, her mother burst in, found her like that, rushed her to the hospital, called the police.
Thank God the mother came back. It's one of the most disturbing accounts I've heard. It really forces you to confront the intersection of severe mental illness, substance abuse, and, well, these other elements.
Absolutely. The Ouija board, the moving coaster, the perceived shadow.
And the chewed ropes. That detail about how the aunt supposedly got free later. The narrator mentioned she'd been tied to the bed initially, but the ropes looked chewed and ripped off. And the door wasn't forced. It adds this layer of, how? Was it just the sheer strength of the psychosis or something else? It really underscores the need for immediate intervention in these crises.
It really does. And the aftermath, just as chilling. The aunt was found later, dead. Hung herself with twine in a nearby barn.
For a tragic end.
And the narrator, permanent scars. The fingernails never grew back properly. Her smile needed fixing. And the nightmares, they continue. Always tied down, her aunt whispering, the taste of blood, seeing her aunt's face among the monsters in the dark.
Utterly traumatizing. It stays with you.
It really does. Okay, for our final story, we're shifting again. This time to the UK, and a name perhaps less known internationally, but infamous in British true crime. Robert John Maudsley.
Ah, yes, Maudsley, a very extreme case.
Born in Liverpool in 1953, had a truly horrific childhood, terrible abuse, institutionalized quite early on. His first known murder was when he was 21.
He killed a man, John Farrell. Apparently, Farrell had shown Maudsley pictures of children he'd abused, kept them like trophies. Maudsley, himself a victim of abuse, just snapped and strangled him.
Right. He turned himself in after that, didn't he? Asked for psychiatric help.
He did, claimed remorse. But it seems that wasn't the whole story. The act of killing Farrell gave him, in his words, a deep satisfaction. It was the revenge he craved.
That's a chilling insight. It highlights how severe trauma can twist into something else. A need for control or retribution that then spirals.
And spiral it did. He was sent to Broadmoor, the high-security hospital. In 1977, he found out another patient, David Francis, was a convicted child abuser. Maudsley befriended him over weeks, gained his trust.
A calculated approach.
Very. Lured Francis into a cell, tied him up, and tortured him for 9 hours until he died.
9 hours.
He got manslaughter for that due to his psychiatric history, but was told he'd never be released. He claimed he'd only kill abusers, but that changed quickly. In 1978, he was moved to Wakefield Prison, and within hours, he killed 2 more inmates.
2 in one day?
Yes. First, Sonny Darwood killed his wife. Maudsley lured him into his cell, garroted him with wire, stabbed him, hid the body under the bed. Then he couldn't lure anyone else, so he went looking. Found William Roberts in the rec room, cornered him, cut his throat.
Just cold, calculated violence.
But the story doesn't end there. The most infamous, gruesome detail concerns William Roberts. After cutting his throat, Maudsley reportedly started smashing Roberts' head against a wall until his skull cracked open.
Okay.
And then, it's alleged he used a makeshift spoon or knife, scooped out some of Roberts' brains, and ate them.
Brah. The cannibalism rumor. That's the detail everyone remembers, even if it's disputed.
Exactly. Afterwards, he apparently just calmly walked to the wing office, put the bloody weapon on the desk, and told the officer he'd shortened the prisoner's roll call by 2.
Chillingly detached.
Now, an official press commission later denied the brain-eating part. They cited the autopsy, said the skull damage was too severe to tell for sure, but, and this is important, at least 3 other inmates told the warden they saw him do it.
All right, that discrepancy is key. Official accounts versus inmate testimony in that kind of closed environment. It's hard to know the absolute truth, but the fact that multiple inmates reported it lends it a disturbing weight. It also speaks to the kind of almost mythic, terrifying reputation he built.
Absolutely. He was deemed too dangerous even for a normal high-security wing, so they built him a special cell in the basement of Wakefield Prison, where he still is.
Or the glass cage.
Pretty much. Bulletproof glass walls, constant observation, furniture, a table and chair made of compressed cardboard so he can't hurt himself. Food comes through a little hatch like a cage within the cell.
Total isolation.
23 hours a day in there. No contact with other inmates. His 1 hour of exercise outside the cell needs 6 prison officers guarding him.
An extreme measure for an extreme individual.
He's asked for things over the years, less strict conditions, a cyanide pill to end his life, even a pet parakeet.
A parakeet.
Yeah. They were genuinely afraid he'd eat it.
That says everything, doesn't it? His case really pushes the boundaries of how society deals with individuals considered irredeemably dangerous. The isolation is profound, raising questions about punishment, containment, and humanity itself. Is he just an anomaly, or a terrifying reflection of humanity's absolute darkest potential?
Heavy questions indeed. And that brings us to the end of our stories for today. We've gone from the Carpathian Mountains to a nightmare within a family home and into the deepest isolation of the prison system. These accounts are disturbing, no doubt, but they do offer a stark look at human experience pushed to its absolute limits. They remind us there's a lot out there, and sometimes inside us, that's unsettling and hard to grasp.
They certainly do. They linger, making you think about that line between the rational and the irrational, safety and danger, sanity, and something else entirely. Perhaps it makes you wonder, how thin is that line for any of us, really?
A thought to definitely mull over. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the darker side of things. If these stories captured your attention and you want to hear more unsettling accounts like these, please do like this story. Maybe share it with someone else who appreciates this kind of exploration. And be sure to subscribe to our channel, Horror Docs.
We appreciate you listening.
Until next time, stay curious. Maybe keep a light on.